The first thing Emily Hart noticed was the trembling in her own hand. It wasn't the kind of tremble that came from fear alone, it came from exhaustion, from carrying the weight of too many sleepless nights, too many bruised hopes, too many whispered promises to her little boy that she wasn't sure she could keep anymore. And as she sat in that red and white booth of the small roadside diner, staring down at a plate of food she couldn't stomach, she felt something inside her finally give way. When the two tattooed men in leather vests walked in, the room seemed to shift, the air tightening around her. She had seconds, maybe less. Her heart hammered. Her throat went dry. And so she raised her hand, palm outward, fingers spread, the silent signal she hoped someone, anyone, would recognize before it was too late. Thank you for being here with us today. Before we go further, if you believe in kindness, in second chances, in the small actions that save lives, please remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe. And tell us in the comments where you're watching from. It truly means the world. Emily had never imagined her life shrinking into moments like this. Years earlier, she'd been the kind of woman who laughed easily, who baked cookies on Saturday mornings, who believed storms always ended in clear skies. But all of that was before she met Ryan Mercer, before she mistook charm for sincerity, before she found herself trapped in the quiet, escalating cycle of a man who controlled with words before he controlled with fists. When she finally escaped 6 months earlier, clutching her 5-year-old son, Oliver, and a duffel bag with 2 sets of clothes, she thought the worst was behind her. But it wasn't. Ryan was relentless. And when she realized he'd tracked her again, this time to the small town where she had tried so desperately to start over, she knew she had reached the end of the road. The diner was supposed to be a safe place. A public place. A moment to breathe before figuring out what to do next. But when she caught the reflection in the glass, the unmistakable shape of his truck turning into the parking lot, panic seized her chest like cold iron. Oliver wasn't with her today, he was with a babysitter she trusted. But that small comfort didn't ease her fear. If Ryan found her, he would force her back, isolate her again, take her son away from her. That had been his latest promise. His latest threat. She couldn't let that happen. She didn't know at first who the 2 large, bearded bikers were. She certainly didn't know they were part of a local motorcycle club known for their tough exterior and fiercely loyal code. She just knew they were strangers, strangers who looked strong, strangers who looked like they didn't scare easily. And she needed someone who wasn't scared. So when the waitress returned and Ryan's shadow darkened the glass door behind her, Emily raised her hand in that quiet, desperate signal. A signal she had once seen in a training pamphlet at a women's shelter. A signal begging for help without speaking a word. One of the tattooed men saw her. She knew by the slight narrowing of his eyes, the shift in his posture. He didn't move quickly or dramatically, he simply watched. Waited. Assessed. The other man followed his gaze, his expression sharpening. They didn't approach her, not yet. They didn't want to spook whoever she was signaling about. But they also didn't look away. Ryan walked in with that slow swagger he always had when he knew he held power over her. He scanned the diner and spotted her instantly. Emily felt the blood drain from her face as he approached, his smile coiling like a snake. He slid into the booth opposite her, uninvited and unwelcome, and began talking in that low, threatening tone she recognized all too well. She kept her eyes downward, her hand now hidden beneath the table, her breath trembling. For a moment, she wondered if maybe the bikers hadn't understood, or maybe they didn't care. Maybe she truly was alone, but she wasn't. One of the men stood. Slowly. Purposefully. Then the other. They walked toward the counter, speaking quietly to the waitress, who glanced at Emily with a flicker of concern. Ryan didn't seem to notice. He was too busy leaning in, fingers tightening around her wrist on the table, telling her what he would do to her for running again. She tried pulling away, but he held fast. Tears threatened to spill. She blinked them back. She would not break. Not here. Not in front of him. And then a shadow fell across the booth. Emily looked up. One of the bikers, his name would later be revealed to her as Mason Doyle, stood almost like a wall between her and the rest of the diner. His arms were crossed, his eyes focused, his presence heavy and grounding. Ryan looked up with irritation, releasing her wrist as though caught doing something he shouldn't. Mason didn't speak. He just stared. And the quietness of that stare seemed to frighten Ryan more than any threat could have. The other biker, Carl Branson, lingered behind Mason, equally steady, equally unmovable. They weren't posturing. They weren't picking a fight. They were simply there. A barrier. A shield. A message. Ryan tried to bluster, tried to threaten, tried to reclaim the upper hand, but Mason simply tilted his head, calm and unshaken. And then Carl nodded subtly toward the front window, where more bikers had begun to arrive, their motorcycles rumbling like an approaching storm. They weren't there to cause trouble. They were there because one of their own had sent a silent signal of his own the moment he recognized a woman in danger. They came because that was their creed: protect the vulnerable, defend the threatened, stand by those who needed strength. Ryan's confidence cracked. Emily saw it happen. The moment fear replaced arrogance. The moment he realized he was outnumbered. Outmatched. Out of options. He stood up fast, muttering something under his breath, and pushed past Mason, nearly stumbling as he hurried out of the diner and toward his truck. The bikers didn't chase him. They didn't need to. The message had been delivered. When the roar of his truck finally faded, Emily felt her body collapse forward, her hands shaking uncontrollably. Mason and Carl sat quietly across from her, letting her breathe, letting her cry, letting her gather herself without pushing her to speak. When she finally did, her voice was barely a whisper, but they listened as though every word mattered. She told them she had a son. She told them she had run out of places to go. She told them she didn't know what to do next. They didn't judge her. They didn't pity her. They simply told her she wasn't alone anymore. Over the next hours, and then days, the motorcycle club helped her find a safe place to stay. They connected her with legal support, with domestic violence advocates, with people who could help her get a protective order and secure full custody of Oliver. They refused any payment. They only asked that she stay safe. They even helped her retrieve her belongings from her old apartment without Ryan ever learning where she had gone. Emily had never felt such unexpected kindness from strangers. And yet, they didn't feel like strangers. They felt like the family she had never had, rough around the edges, loud, intimidating to outsiders, but with hearts made of something strong and noble. Weeks later, when she stood in a courtroom and heard the judge grant her full custody and order Ryan to stay away permanently, she wept again, but this time from relief. From gratitude. From finally feeling free. Near the end of all this, Emily found herself at the same diner, sitting in the same booth, but this time with Oliver beside her and a heart no longer weighed down by fear. When Mason and Carl walked in, Oliver ran to them with innocent joy, and Emily felt her throat tighten with emotion. She realized then that sometimes help comes from the least expected places. Sometimes angels wear leather, ride motorcycles, and carry stories etched in ink across their skin. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who might need hope today, and subscribe for more stories that remind us of the goodness still left in the world. And before we end, we have one special request. Please comment below with the words, "Kindness can save lives."